Welcome back, LEAPcast listeners. This is a bonus episode called LEAPswap, where I swap my mic with my guest. The guest, who is now the host, can ask me anything. Tune in for a rich discussion on life, mental health, relationships, family, and more. And our guest, Brian bbSketch Bowens, now becomes a host. So tell me, Brian, what are your questions that you want to ask?
Yeah. So I would say, again, I'm a sports guy, and I pay attention to all the different personalities that are in, sports. Right. And I've noticed that there's this common, this common trait, right. That happens within sports. So you can even catch it like during a timeout, with any sport that you're watching. And a lot of times you'll see a player kind of be talking. They might say some vulgar stuff. They might say something, but it's to the extent of it's almost like there's an invisible enemy, an invisible doubter, right? And so early on, I talked about the theme of a dark muse. Like Kobe Bryant used to tap into this side where, you go into this dark side where you're challenging yourself. And a lot of times you can do it in a way as if there's somebody who's doubting you. And so a lot of time, there was a time in my career where I would remember certain things that, or look at certain things that may have not been true and take that as a challenge and kind of use that to kind of tick myself off to the point where it helps me to drive myself. Now, from a professional standpoint, is there something that is a better alternative to doing that? Or is that even something, is that something healthy, or do you feel like that's just human nature to tap into that dark side per se?
No, excuse me. I think that's a really great question. I might have to, go deep and find, look up some stuff for this. But
yeah.
what a couple of things I think about. Like I think about how I watched The Last Dance and the Jordan documentary series, and how it would talk about like he would get upset at people whether they said something or not, right? Or if somebody had a good game, he would use that. If somebody had a bad game, that he had a way, like you said, to kind of fuel himself, right? And then when you talk about Kobe, right? And then you talk about like all these folks who find a way, and how you were able to tap into that for yourself. I think like what happens over time is that people have to find what is it that's going to allow you to get to your full potential, right? Right. Sometimes it's somebody saying something to you. Sometimes it's somebody doubting you. Sometimes it's that thought of like, what they talk about, the chip on your shoulder, right? That allows people to feel like you doubted the wrong one, and I'm going to show you. And I think that can be great, right? Because sometimes, unfortunately, we're even going back to folks in school or assignments, some people feel like they're not going to do the work unless it's like at the last moment. Now, I'm not encouraging that, but sometimes it's not until we have that pressure or that really situation that gets us there. And sometimes doubt or people counting us out sometimes can produce that. What I think is the tough part about it, and the thing that I think is difficult, is that sometimes we don't have a off switch for that, right? So like, yeah, that drives you to shoot as many baskets as you need to shoot to get better, or that allows you to practice your monologue or work on your craft, which I think is great, right? That allows you to do that. But then what happens with your friends? What happens with your family? What happens, like, are you still that competitive with those people, right? Because I think sometimes I would imagine in some of their personal life, if they don't allow a little bit of vulnerability or a little bit of letting people in, you now create like a wall, and it's hard. So it's on that side, I don't think it's healthy. In terms of like competition, sports, business, and even other areas, I think it can be healthy. I think you can really maybe push yourself. But what happens though is like, what happens when you beat everything, right? Like you really have to like make up stuff. And I think like, and if you can do that, like you said, like get something to tick you off, to drive you, hey, I don't see anything wrong with that. But if it follows you into like where like you're finding things to tick you off about your wife or your spouse or your partner that they didn't even do, right? Now that's an issue. Right. Or even when they say like, where you minimize things that you do, and people say like, wait, am I crazy? Did this happen? Like, I know you did this, but you're making me feel like it didn't happen. Gaslighting, right? Right. Mm-hmm. That's where I think it's dangerous. So I think like the real practice is the on and off switch, right? How can I get it into creative mode? How can I get it into, beast mode, like getting the most out of it, but then knowing I'm about to be around people or I got to flip the switch. So that's kind of my initial thoughts. And I would wonder, like, I would wonder, like, if Jordan feels happy about his personal life, right? I would wonder if Kobe, like, it felt like later in the years, Kobe got better with his personal life. Mm-hmm. I want to assume that LeBron is better or has learned from those things, mm-hmm. and is better in his personal life, but maybe took some shots in his professional life, right? So for you, I can hear it, right? And when you talk about like who's your tribe, you've learned some of those adjustments. But if you were all art and like no balance, I think I would be concerned.
Nice.
Cool, man. Well, I think that was a great question, and I love that you put it out there, and I'm going to think about it some more. I mean, that's just really, what are those things that make us great, but sometimes maybe can have a downside? Yeah. Well, everybody, you heard it here. This is LEAPswap, where, they get to ask me some questions, and I never know what's going to be asked, and that was a great question from one of our guests on the show, Brian bbSketch Bowens. Thanks for joining us once again. Thank you for listening to LEAPswap. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have more questions for either me or my guests, please head to the LEAPcast Facebook group to ask. Visit theleapcast.com/Facebook to get started.